Welcome back to Stationeers and welcome back to the moon. Since episode 5, I spent several game days off camera gathering ore. Thanks to a tip in the comments, I've also been using the mining backpacks to expand my storage space rather than the belts, since they have more slots and they only cost 6 iron. So, I have hundreds and hundreds of ore. And the best part of all, I found some nickel. We need to get all this smelted up, and especially we're going to be making some Constantan and Invar, which are the alloys that use nickel. Constantan is pretty easy, it just needs a high pressure furnace, over 20 megapascals and temperature anywhere over 1000 Kelvin. However, Invar is more picky, and it only wants 18 to 20 megapascals specifically, and 1.2 to 1.5 kilokelvin. So to get this done, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna grab 16 volatiles and the matching amount of oxide, and I'm gonna use those to fire up the furnace and get it quite hot and high pressure. We'll make the Constantan first, and then cool down the furnace and get the Invar made as well. There we go, 16 volatiles gets us over 20 megapascals of pressure. So now we're gonna put equal amounts of nickel and copper to get the Constantan. And there it is. I have another 25 nickel here, so I'm gonna make some more Constantan. And now, the furnace is at 29 megapascals and 1.8 kilokelvins. I need to vent it and bring it down to around 20 megapascals. Since I wanted to cool it down, one use of that heat is to make some steel in the meantime. So I'm gonna go for a large batch of 200 grams of steel. We're doing 3 stacks of iron and 1 stack of coal. There we go, the steel is made, and we're at 1.3 kilokelvins. So let's pop the nickel along with an equal amount of iron in there, and that's gonna be our Invar. Now, I just need this furnace to drop below 20 megapascals. And there it is. Invar. Okay, I'm gonna get the rest of these ores smelted, and then we'll carry on with this episode. Look at that beautiful pile of ingots shining in the sun. The thing is, doing all that mining made me realize that I would rather automate mining sooner rather than later. The thing is, that's gonna take power, and right now my only power generation is the solid coal generator, which could keep up, but that's a lot of coal to mine, and a single solar panel that isn't even solar tracking. So in order to get mining automated, I first need to shore up my power situation. For that, I want to build a bunch of solar panels, and I want to put them up high on some sort of structure to keep them out of the way and give them good sun exposure. So the plan is to build a little bit of a ceiling beam and put the solars up above. Eventually that structure will be part of the roof of the industrial hall, but we're not aiming to build all that today. So I'm gonna pop 100 steel into the auto lathe and get it making steel frames. This way I'm gonna get 50 frames and the machine will stop when it's done with them. The other thing I want to get going are cables and heavy cables on the electronics printer. I have had some issues with this stacker located here when I use it to cut ingots, so I'm gonna relocate it, wondering if the output from the electronics printer is interfering with it and bugging out the input. What has happened is I've put an ingot in a few times and it just disappeared. So let's give it a new home. I know that stacker was initially intended to be the output of the electronics printer, but for now I'm using it a lot more to chop up ingots to the size that I want them to be.
Hydration critical.
And one thing I want to do with it is separate 3 Constantan, because now that I have Constantan, I am gonna make some of the medium filters. That way they last longer and I don't have to worry about that quite so often. Okay, so medium filters. I'm gonna make a nitrogen one. Okay, we need 5 silver per, meaning I want to cut 15 silver. 1 nitrogen filter and 2 carbon dioxide filters. Meanwhile, the electronic printers has made a lot of cables. We're gonna need these to connect the data side with solar panels. Also got a whole lot of steel frames ready, so let's grab those up before they start flying off too far. Now, also want some heavy duty cables. And for those, I'm gonna need gold and copper. So, I'm gonna stick a lot of copper in the machine. And I'll use the gold to control the amount. I figure 50 cables might be a good start. So that is 25 gold. Okay, my filters are made. Now for the steel sheets, I'm thinking 50 of those as well. So that is 25 steel. Let's get that cut. And the frames are about to be done. Okay, so 25 steel into the auto lathe. And we'll let it make sheets while we go inside and get a drink. One other great tip that I got in the comments is that potato plants don't die of old age. And so the past 5 or so game days, I've had these potato plants just sitting unharvested, keeping my potatoes fresh for when I'm ready to eat them. I'm assuming the downside is that they're probably consuming water and carbon dioxide, but for the moment we seem to be doing okay on that. Back outside there's a whole bunch of materials waiting for us, so let's grab those up. I also need to make sure that I restock my oxygen since it is getting a little bit empty. Let's see what the pipe situation is. Okay, the pipe is empty, so I need to crush up some oxide. And then the other crusher, get more ice water processed. The cables are ready, so next up let's make solar panels. For that I'm gonna need 5 gold, 20 copper, and 15 steel each. I'm thinking I like to make about 6 of them. So that's 90 steel, 120 copper, and 30 gold. We'll let that run and start building up the structure. I will likely rearrange this industrial hall again. So what I'm gonna do is expand it out this way some more. Now, frames, in case you didn't know, you can just attach them anywhere. They don't have to be supported. They will happily float. But for aesthetic reasons, I would rather have them be one connected structure. One more up. And I need to grab more frames, so I have enough to go across. Okay, we can start getting some solar panels installed. The orientations on the solar panels and the daylight sensor matter, so if you're building your own setup, make sure that you line them up correctly. I'm placing the solar panels 1 cube apart to prevent them from shading each other. I don't know if that affects them, but right now I don't have enough of them for the space to be a problem. While I'm waiting, I can also wire them up. I'm gonna build a battery kit. For that I need 20 gold. Because I'm just making one, I don't have to control it with the amount. And just change the recipe. And I need to pay attention to make sure that I orient all the panels in the same way. That way I can use batch writing to control all of them at once. I have a feeling I'm gonna need more heavy cables. Though I do have a few of them left over here. Another thing I will need is an IC10 to control the solar panels with. While I wait on that, I'm gonna lay the control cable down.
Power critical.
Okay, the battery kit is ready. Let's make the IC10, and after that we need a housing for it. The battery is gonna sit on this little frame shelf that I set up for it. Perfect. I had just enough heavy cables to get to the battery. Okay, the solar panels, in order to work, also need a glass sheet each. Let's make a few of those. The IC10 is ready. Time to make the housing. And then a sensor. And I think that with this extra power and having this bit of a ceiling, one thing I'm gonna do is also add some lights so that when it's nighttime you can actually see what's happening outside the cone of my headlamp. So I will actually make two sensors and use one of them for proximity to control the lights and add some lights as well.
Power low.
But first, the daylight sensor. And of course, I'm gonna need light kits. The IC10 housing for this, I figure, can
Power critical.
reside right here above the battery. Yeah, I pondered whether to grab... Oh, the base is out of power. Let's get some in the generator. Okay. Yeah, with the programming of the IC-10, I have two options. I could grab the computer from inside the base, or I can build another one. And I think I'm gonna go with building another one. Right now we have the materials, and it's convenient to have that in there in case I need to adjust the cooler program. And of course I need an editor motherboard to go with that. While that gets built, I'm gonna set up the proximity sensor and some of the lights. I'm not sure which of the lights produce more, but I'm gonna go based on the assumption that this long, wide one gives good light. The computer is ready, so I'm gonna build the motherboard for it. And I want to weld up these floor frames as well so I can walk on them comfortably. In fact, I'm gonna add a few more frames to have a floor for the computer. While we do that, I want to express my thanks to everybody who interacts with these videos and especially comments on them with new information. Not just for engagement and algorithm purposes, although as a very small creator in a very niche game, that means a lot to me, but also because even after 1600 hours in this game, I am learning something new every episode. So thank you for helping me have new ideas and build things in new ways even after all this time. Okay, the computer is connected. So now we can write some code. Okay, the code is built. So now I need to set device 0 to the daylight sensor. And if everything is right, then this should start tracking the sun. Editor Aleki here. Everything was not right, and it took me far too long to figure out that the code I wrote, I did not push it to the IC housing. But we'll skip over that to the moment I realize it. Oh, I forgot one thing, and that is to export the script to the IC housing. And now these solar panels are turning towards the sun, or at least as far as they can, with the sun being below the horizon. We'll see after sunrise if they are tracking properly, but this looks hopeful. Meanwhile, let's get the lights wired up. I have these power and control line coming from the solar panels. So I'm gonna tap into it for my lights.
Hydration critical.
But looks like I need more regular cables. Now I'm gonna wait for morning and make sure that the solar tracking works correctly before I'm adding extra code into that IC to also control the lights. And there's the sun, but the solar panels are pointing the wrong way. So I'm gonna turn the sensor around. And because I disassembled it, I need to go to the IC housing and reassign the device knob. Okay, now we're going to be getting almost 500 watts of power from 6 panels all throughout the day. So I'm going to add the code to also control the lights. For the lights, I want two features. I want them to only turn on if the proximity sensor detects something, and I want them to only turn on when the sun is near or below the horizon. So for that, I'm also going to use the vertical property of the daylight sensor. So those two together will control the lights. Okay, the new version of the code is written. So now I need to set the proximity sensor on device 1 of the housing. I set the code to only turn on the lights when the sun is below 80 degrees, meaning about 10 degrees above the horizon. So it'll be until next night before we see if the lights are working properly. Meanwhile, I've been making some insulated pipes so that we can start capturing gases. Okay, the piping is in place, but I also want a volume pump to help evacuate the furnace. I'm gonna set this to the maximum of 10 liters and connect it to power. I think tapping into this line is probably the easiest way to do that. Furnace gases are now going into the tank. Eventually I may want to add some automation to this pump as well, so it automatically turns off when the furnace is empty. Nighttime is here. So if I approach the sensor, the lights turn on. I do want to increase the range on the sensor a little bit. Apparently the number on the knob is not the number of frames that it reaches. So let's see what's a good value. I think this is pretty good. We will want to add more lamps, even just these 3 though, making the area a little bit more visible, I hope. That's the end of episode 6, so I'm hoping to see you next time for more building. For now, Aleki out.